Chapter 12. Previously, after exposing Arthur Vane's corruption and clearing Aether Core's name, Elias faces a deadly ultimatum. Accept a solo invitation to a private orbital server or watch his partner Maya framed as a traitor. Now alone against a superior adversary, he must decide if he can survive the trap without his team's tactical support. Now, Chapter 12 begins. The elevator doors parted with a hushed pneumatic sigh, depositing Elia's thorn into a silence so absolute it felt pressurized. This was the orbital server room of Vane Dynamics, a cathedral of data suspended in the upper atmosphere. The air here was scrubbed sterile and chilled to a temperature that bit through his jacket. Rows of black monoliths stretched into the gloom, their status LEDs blinking in a slow, rhythmic pulse, the heartbeat of a sleeping god. Elias stepped forward, his boots making no sound on the polished anti-static floor. He was alone, exactly as Arthur Vane had demanded. No Kenji to hack the perimeter, no Maya to watch his back, no decoy drives or emergency EMP cages. Just him and the man who owned the sky. At the far end of the hall, bathed in the cold blue glow of a massive wall-sized display, stood Arthur Vane. The CEO looked less like a tech mogul and more like a judge presiding over an execution. His suit was tailored to within an inch of its life, his posture rigid, hands clasped behind his back. On the screen behind him, a video loop played in high definition. Maya Lin, pale and terrified, accessing a restricted terminal with a badge that didn't belong to her. The timestamp was forged, the angle suspiciously perfect, but the narrative was clear. Treason. "You're punctual, Elias," Arthur said, his voice echoing slightly in the vast space. "I appreciate efficiency. It's a trait we used to share before you decided to become a parasite." Elias stopped 10 feet away, keeping his hands visible. "Cut the feed, Arthur. You have what you want, I'm here." "Do I?" Arthur tapped a command into the biometric tablet resting on a console beside him. The image of Maya zoomed in, freezing on a frame where she appeared to be downloading terabytes of classified military AI schematics. This footage goes to the SEC, the FBI, and every major news outlet in 6 minutes. By morning, Maya Lin will be in a federal holding cell, charged with industrial espionage and treason. Her life is over. Your little startup, Aether Core, will be dissolved before lunch. "And if I do what you ask?" Elias asked, his voice steady despite the knot of rage tightening in his chest. Arthur smiled, a thin, predatory expression. "You plug this drive into the main terminal." He gestured to a small, matte black device sitting on the console. It was labeled simply, "Confession." "You upload a signed affidavit admitting that you orchestrated the theft, that Maya was merely your unwitting mule, and that Aether Core's entire technology stack is built on stolen Vane IP. You destroy your own reputation to save hers. A fair trade, don't you think? One career for another." Elias looked at the drive, then back at the frozen image of Maya. The humiliation burned, hot and acidic. To admit to crimes he hadn't committed, to kneel before the man who had sabotaged him at every turn, it was the ultimate defeat. It was the narrative Arthur wanted. The brilliant but corrupt engineer finally brought to heel by the superior force of legacy power. "It's impossible to fight you," Elias said, letting his shoulders slump. He allowed the exhaustion to show in his voice, the weight of months of legal battles, raids, and threats finally crushing him. "You have the lawyers, the regulators, the media. If I don't do this, she loses everything. If I do, maybe there's a chance to rebuild later." Arthur's smile widened. He had expected resistance, perhaps a desperate bluff. He hadn't expected immediate capitulation. The psychological pressure had worked perfectly. He saw the break in Elias' eyes. "Wisdom, Elias. Finally, pick up the drive." Elias walked to the console. His movements were slow, deliberate. He reached out and took the asterisk confession drive. It was cool to the touch, innocuous looking. As his fingers closed around it, he felt the subtle hum of the hardware inside. To Arthur, it was a vessel for surrender. To Elias, it was a key. He moved to the main terminal, a sleek interface dominated by a single port. Arthur watched him closely, his finger hovering over the tablet that would initiate the broadcast of the doctored footage. "Go on," Arthur urged, his tone dripping with condescension. "Save her. Admit you're a thief." Elias inserted the drive. The moment the connection clicked home, the atmosphere in the room shifted. The rhythmic blinking of the server lights stuttered, then accelerated into a frantic strobe. "What did you do?" Arthur snapped, stepping forward. "That's not uploading the progress bar." "It's not uploading a confession, Arthur," Elias said, his voice dropping the feigned weakness. He turned to face the CEO, his posture straightening, the mask of defeat falling away to reveal the sharp, calculating architect beneath. "It's executing a mirror protocol." On the massive wall screen, the image of Maya vanished. In its place, lines of code began to cascade faster than the eye could follow, overlaid with a forensic metadata analysis. Green checkmarks flashed rapidly, verifying cryptographic signatures. "You tried to frame Maya using a deepfake generated by your own unstable military AI model," Elias explained, his words cutting through the hum of the servers. "But you got greedy. You used the Orbital server's raw compute to render it, thinking no one would ever see the source logs. You forgot that every action leaves a hash." Arthur stared at the screen, his face draining of color. "Shut it down. Cut the power." He lunged for his tablet, tapping furiously. "Security, lock down the server room." "Too late," Elias said calmly. "Kenji just triggered the handshake. The drive isn't writing to your local drive. It's reflecting your admin privileges directly into the public blockchain ledger. Every illegal training run, every off-book military contract, every line of that forged video, it's all being minted as immutable proof right now. And because I bound the stream to the building's life support telemetry, if you try to sever the connection manually, the system interprets it as a critical failure and broadcasts the murder attempt alert to every news feed globally." Arthur froze, his hand hovering inches from the manual override switch. The realization hit him with the force of a physical blow. His trap had been inverted. In his arrogance, in his desire to craft the perfect narrative of Elias' guilt, he had generated the cryptographic evidence of his own fraud. The metadata overlay on the screen highlighted the discrepancies in the video of Maya, tracing the pixel manipulation back to Arthur's personal admin account. "You can't do this," Arthur whispered, his voice trembling. "I am Vane Dynamics. I am the board. They won't believe a hacker over me." "They don't have to believe me," Elias replied, crossing his arms. "The ledger doesn't care about titles. It only cares about truth, and the truth is currently trending #1 worldwide." As if on cue, a secondary screen on the console flickered to life. It was a live feed of global financial markets. The stock ticker for Vane Dynamics was plummeting, a vertical red line crashing toward zero. Beside it, a social media aggregation window displayed a flurry of posts. One stood out, pinned at the top. A statement from Alina Vance, the venture capitalist who had once held Elias' fate in her hands. "Vane Dynamics has engaged in fraudulent practices and illegal weapons development. Vance Capital is immediately divesting all holdings and cooperating fully with federal authorities. We condemn these actions in the strongest possible terms." Arthur stared at Alina's tweet, his mouth opening and closing silently. The alliance he had counted on, the safety net of the investor class, had evaporated in seconds. Alina wasn't saving him, she was throwing him under the bus to save her own firm. He was isolated. The elevator chimed again, a cheerful sound that clashed violently with the tension in the room. The doors opened, and a team of federal auditors in dark suits stepped out, flanked by armed marshals. They didn't look at Elias. Their eyes were locked on Arthur, who stood paralyzed before his own console, surrounded by the glowing evidence of his downfall. "Arthur Vane," the lead auditor announced, his voice crisp and authoritative. "We have a warrant for your arrest regarding violations of the Defense Production Act, securities fraud, and conspiracy to commit espionage. Please step away from the terminal." Arthur looked at Elias, a mixture of hatred and disbelief in his eyes. You think this makes you a hero? You've made enemies you can't imagine. The people I was working for, they aren't like me. They don't play by market rules. Let them come, Elias said, turning his back on the arrested CEO. I'll be ready. He walked past the federal agents, past the humiliated titan of industry, and toward the elevator. As the doors closed, sealing away the chaos of the server room, Elias exhaled a breath he felt he'd been holding for years. The air in the elevator was warm, human. He checked his phone. A message from Maya, safe, watching the news. Come home. He allowed himself a small smile. He had won. Not with guns, not with brute force, but with code. He had turned Arthur's greatest weapon, legal manipulation and narrative control, against him. The power dynamic had flipped. Arthur was the criminal, Elias was the architect who had cleaned house. The elevator descended smoothly, breaking through the cloud layer, bringing him back down to earth. As the doors opened to the lobby, the noise of the city rushed in, sirens, chatter, the chaotic energy of a world reacting to the news. Elias stepped out into the sunlight, squinting against the glare. His phone buzzed again, not a text this time, an encrypted push notification from an unknown sender. No name, no identifier, just a string of coordinates and a timestamp. Elias paused, the celebratory mood cooling instantly. He tapped the notification. A map loaded, pinpointing a location deep in a restricted zone, far from any corporate headquarters. Below the coordinates was a single line of text. Source code origin. Come alone if you want the truth about who really owns the AI. Elias looked up at the sky, where the orbital server still hung invisible above the clouds. Arthur had been a middleman. The game wasn't over. The board had just gotten bigger, and the new players weren't playing for stock prices. They were playing for something else entirely. He pocketed the phone, adjusted his collar, and walked into the crowd, his mind already racing through the implications of the new coordinate. The victory was sweet, but the war had just entered a new phase. In the next chapter, as the dust settles on Arthur Vane's downfall, Elias realizes that a new, far more dangerous game has just begun with a mysterious countdown ticking toward an unknown fate.